and welcome back to the Owl Pod, the official podcast of Temple Athletics. I'm your host, Kevin Copp. I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving holiday. Happy to be back with you today. And our guest today is my good friend, Ray Dunne. Ray is a 2022 graduate of Temple University's Klein School of Media and Communication. As an undergraduate, Ray appeared on a number of Temple student media platforms, including Owl Sports Update as an anchor and as the general manager of WHIP Radio. Ray now works as a producer for 97.5 The Fanatic sports talk radio here in Philadelphia, but Temple fans will likely recognize Ray's voice as the voice of Temple women's basketball here on the Temple Sports Network and as the play-by-play broadcaster for Temple men's basketball on ESPN+. Here is Temple's own Ray Dunne after this quick word from our Alpod sponsors.
And we're back with the action. Coke Zero Sugar might be the best Coke ever.
That's right, Jim. With an irresistible taste and zero sugar, Coke Zero Sugar is a must-try for any sports fan. So make sure you... Wait, Jim, I didn't mean try it right now. We're still on the air.
Best Coke ever? Take a taste, Jen.
Really?
No, not right now, Jen. We got a game to call.
I feel like this is a Flintstones and Jetsons crossover. You and I never get to actually talk to each other. We're just covering all the same events like across the way from each other. So this is nice to actually get some time to talk to you.
Yeah, this is the equivalent of the wave at the end of the men's basketball game. Hey, great seeing you. Good luck with your post-game show.
Yep.
I'll talk to you.
Hope everything was good. I couldn't hear any of it. Seemed like you were having fun. Yeah. Well,
and conference season's even worse.
This is true.
We're never in the same place.
This is true, yes. Yeah, we just are crisscrossing the entire two-thirds of the eastern United States opposite each other here. So I'm going to try not to be too inside baseball since you and I obviously come from the same world and in some ways I think have lived parallel lives. So I got to try to remember that not everyone knows the inner contours of the broadcasting world. But did it start for you you went to Springford, is that correct? Grew up in Royersford?
That's right.
So did you guys have a TV station there? Because that's kind of where it began for me, and it was in high school. Was it the same at Springford?
Yeah, absolutely the same. I mean, there was an amazing program that had been built there. Steve Bonnetts did a tremendous job. Basically came from working in TV, wanted to get an education and build it from scratch with Cheryl Merja, who was my broadcasting teacher in high school. And they put together just an incredible program. The studio there, the things I learned there, I felt like I was 2 steps ahead when I got to Temple, which was awesome. And I got to call something like almost 30 games just with the live production that they had. So I was doing studio shows, I was calling games, the high school advantage I got, and just the passion I developed for it there kind of set the groundwork for everything else. And then I always joke, RCTV, Ram Country TV was like the first big gig for me.
Were you one of the kids, I know it's like the broadcasting cliche, were you like the 8-year-old kid, like, muting the TV and calling the games into a tape recorder? Do you have that kind of origin story?
Yeah. And like the backyard wiffle ball games, if you're not playing, like,
yes.
I'm sitting there on like the ledge of someone's retaining wall, like giving commentary for the games, or if I'm not playing the basketball game, giving commentary to it. Yeah. It started out very young. I felt like everyone else needed to know what I was seeing in the game and what I thought about the game. And it just never stopped. It has not stopped since.
So my knowledge of Springford is somewhat limited, but I grew up right down the road. I grew up in King of Prussia, went to Upper Merion, and same thing, just lucky because some schools in our area had TV stations, some didn't. Upper Merion did, Springford did, PW did, but other schools didn't. And I always felt lucky at Upper Merion that we were, I don't know, our graduating class was 250. Your graduating class was probably at least double that, right? Springford's enormous.
625.
Jeez, it's crazy. It's crazy. Now that we live here in Jersey, all the schools out here are huge. Like our kids are going to graduate from a school that big, and it feels overwhelming to me. Was there like a lot of competition? I felt like the way that I started when I went to the Viking Channel, I went at the end of my freshman year. I had 2 friends that were 2 years older that were doing the game. They were doing football and basketball, and so I just showed up. And, I mean, it wasn't, like, that long before I got to, like, get on the air and do a softball game, and I'm sure it was god-awful. But That was like then at that point I'm hooked. Obviously, I called a game. I'm probably end of my freshman year. I'm 14 years old and calling a game that you can like tune to channel 21. I'm old enough that we were still in like the regular cable rotation where people had to click. Like Nickelodeon was 23 and we were on 21. It was pretty like prime cable real estate in that day. But there weren't a lot of kids doing it because our school was smaller. Was there like an enormous amount of competition at Royersford? Were there like 70 kids all in this thing or not?
So it kind of got whittled down. There was classes built into it. So there's a broadcasting minor, a broadcasting major, and then a major two. And the major twos, that third year class was down to like 9, 7, 8, 9 kids. And it became competitive to get into that class. It was competitive to grow there. But the biggest thing for me, there was someone there a year older than me, Anthony DeBundo, who now works for the Ringer. He's Bill Simmons' favorite gambling guy, which tells you something about just how good he is, how smart he is. But honestly, it had gotten to the point where DeBundo was the sports guy. He was this, that I'm best friends with him, have been for years. I was so tired of hearing about Anthony DeBundo that I was like, oh, I'm just going to work hard. I'm just going to like try and take everything that you have as like a legacy as a 17, 18-year-old and just try and top it. And it like was a healthy back and forth between the two of us that kind of fostered, that those early couple years of like, I want to do this and I want to do this at a high level. And I tell him all the time, like I was chasing to be better than him just so I didn't have to hear about, DeBundo did this, DeBundo did that, DeBundo ended up at Syracuse, like the whole thing. But yeah, there was, I think he was the most talented especially sports media wise of all the people that I encountered. But there was people that went on to do film, went on to do, other things within the sports landscape, in the media landscape. But he was a year older than me, Anthony DeBundo, and it was like, all right, yeah, Anthony, we're good friends, but I'm going to make sure that like people are talking about DeBundo and Ray when it comes to doing media stuff.
It's so funny because your Anthony DeBundo was my Steve Wanzik, who was 2 years older, went to Syracuse, of course, as all the good broadcasting students do. So, I say that tongue in cheek, obviously, because your story is inevitably going to lead you to Temple. And at what point did that start to? I mean, did right away you're doing the work at the TV station? Was the thought like, okay, this is the career path. I'm going to go someplace I could do this in school. And then how does Temple kind of factor into that? Obviously, great communication school. It's got that reputation in the Philadelphia area. You're growing up here, but how did that process work for you?
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it went. I went to sports broadcasting camp as a kid. So yeah, I knew this was something that we were invested in. This was something I was going to try and do. And someone I'd met there, Addison Hunsaker, was 2 years older than me. Ended up at Temple, was doing stuff at Temple. So when I was in the process of trying to figure out where I wanted to go, Syracuse was, the option because that was an option. Sure. Had thought about Penn State, had thought about, some other schools in there. And I think I ended up, Boston U was one that I had thought about and somehow got in there. So going through that whole process, I went down to visit Addison because he was doing stuff with Al Sports Update. He was doing stuff to TV, and I just wanted to shadow. And I was like, this is, I like what I got monetarily from Temple. I thought this was going to work out. And I show up there, and Matt Fine let me run teleprompter as a high school student shadowing. And I was like, well, if I can run teleprompter as a high school student, could you imagine what I'm going to be able to do when I get on campus? And then Addison took me to WHIP radio. And I sat in while he was doing a show. And I was like, oh, he's a sophomore doing this show. And, there seems like there's a pretty healthy number of people with similar passion. I just loved that visit. Like I went down there and I was like, there's so much I can do here. And I remember, I think I tweeted it when I was like a senior in high school. I went down and my dad's friend lived in like Center City for the Eagles parade. And like being down there and being in the city, I don't know what the experience, obviously the parade, everyone was thrilled with what was going on. And, but like just thinking about living in a city and living in Philadelphia specifically, I always wanted to live in Philly. So I was like, there's a good chance this career is going to take me somewhere that's not here. I might as well live in Philly at some point. So I was like, you know what? Absolutely. You know, this is what I want to do. It's a great broadcast program. I love the visit I had when I was down there, and I want to be in Philadelphia. And if it only lasts 4 years being in Philadelphia, so be it. That'll be the 4 years that I enjoy the most, but I'm going to go to Temple. And that's kind of what led me down that path.
I knew of Temple and thought of Temple in that same way as a really robust communications program. It obviously does. So what was the experience like? Obviously, you had this idea that you were going to get, your ability to get hands-on and do things right away. How did it work out for you as you actually got here and got to work your way through it in the 4 years here?
It was amazing. I mean, the 4 years at Temple, it's why I, wear the cherry and white with so much pride now. I love what I do now, but the 4 years I had as an undergrad here is the reason why I'm doing everything that I'm doing now. The people I met, the professors, the mentors, the friendship. I mean, I think about the talent that I worked with. I was talking to a Temple student, a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, what I learned from the people I worked around. Lindsay Mopper went up and was covering the Bills there for a couple of years right out of school. She's tremendously talented. What I learned from working with her, Josh Safran might be the funniest, most entertaining guy I've ever seen just naturally on camera or on the radio. And I listened and working with him, I learned so much from him. Sam Cohn's covering the Ravens in Baltimore. And like the people that I worked with, I'm so excited to see where they end up and what they gave. And I took a little bit of everything from them. And those are just the students next to me. And I remember the first time I met Sam Cohn, I was like, oh God, this kid's going to take so many opportunities from me. Like I was annoyed when I met him. I was like, like he seems like a great guy. He's one of my best friends in the world now, but I remember that. So like the talent of people you work with is there. And then just the mentorship. Matt Fine and John DiCarlo did more for me over 4 years than you could ever imagine. And, I was involved from week one at Al Sports Update and at WHIP Radio. I got on the air for one show, WHIP, my freshman year. It was the Robert Covington hour because for an hour at a time, John Franco Liliano and I would yell at each other back and forth. He hated Covington. I liked Covington. It inevitably took over our airtime every week. But it was, and I was lucky that they had a spot open. They were like, yeah, no one can work this shift here. Freshman, go make the world of it with this senior and see if you have anything there. And then I obviously became more involved, ended up the general manager of the station. And at Al Sports Update, I started as a live hit coordinator, for the Jeff Collins pressers, and then slowly worked my way up, doing reporting, anchoring. And a lot of it was, the belief that the people had around me, especially Matt Fine and John DiCarlo. And DiCarlo, because I was during COVID, I mean, during that time in COVID, I was career crisis, just like mentally so out of it. And I was in leadership at that point at the radio station. And I would call DiCarlo about a radio station thing and end up being like, I probably owe him money for like therapy over that summer of just like talking me through, hey, you're going to be all right. You're going to be good. You're going to figure it out. You're really talented. You just keep going with what you're going. And I think part of that was I was supposed to go to the Olympics in 2020 with TUTV, and that fell through. And that was like what I banked on being my, like, everyone's got like the top resume thing they want coming out of college. I was like, oh, that's a thing. They'll get me hired anywhere. And I was like, well, my time to have the top resume thing is going to come down to one more year, 1.5 more years here once we get, towards the end of this pandemic. And that was, I think back to the time that DiCarlo was talking to me on the phone over that summer. I think a lot of like my end up career success comes from just like the leadership and the guidance I got from him, from Matt Fine and just Paul Gluck, all those wonderful people at Klein.
Well, there is such an infrastructure in place here, and I think that was what I was getting at earlier, was I give you credit because I really turned tail and went somewhere where there just wasn't any of that, so I could kind of do my own thing, for better and for worse. But, there was not the kind of robust student media in terms of like an organizational setup the way that it is here at Temple, and I'm interested in what your experience was, especially now, not to put the cart before the horse, but obviously we're going to get to a point where now you're working directly for the athletic department, which is similar in some ways and different in others. And I think, again, for better and for worse, the way Temple has a true independence among its student journalists. And I think that sets you up to be better journalists. And there's a reason that people have gone on to do all these great things. I watch, Inside the Nest and shows like that. And I give them a lot of credit because I don't think I would have had the guts to ever be critical as a student. I definitely wouldn't have, as a student, knowing like, oh, I could be in class with Matthew Stafford. I'm not going to talk about the 3 interceptions he just threw against Alabama this past week. So did you ever have a tough time grappling with like the actual news journalism side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when you think about the broadcasting side, like I think the play-by-play broadcaster and you want to highlight the story of what's happening in the game. I think some of us tend to not want to be. Now I end up in sports talk radio, so I end up in the most critical form of
I want to get. We're getting to that.
So I do think there's an element of that, but I try to operate, and this is something I've taken with me on like the idea that if you were going to say it, you better be able to say it to them. If you're going to say it about them, say it to them. So I'm not going to seek you out and tell you to your face that you're bad at your job or that you're bad at this, you did something. But if I watched that game and I felt like you did something wrong in that game, I'm entitled to say it. And if you want to say, hey man, you're actually wrong in your analysis of what happened here, here's the breakdown, then I have to be able to accept that. And it is tough in a sense to know that like, hey, yeah, that person could be in class with you, but you lost by 20 and you got beat 3 times by the same route. Like, you know it. You don't want me to point it out, but you know it. And like, your team lost, and like, I'm not going to ask the question after the game, after you lose, and be like, so what positives do you take from this way? No, what went wrong? Like, so I think I think there are much better examples of student journalists and journalists that have come from Temple than me, because I did, end up more in the sports talk radio world than that. And, I didn't necessarily go down the path of like the newspaper reporter that's got to get the scoop and got to get all the dirt and all that stuff. Like I mentioned Sam Cohn earlier, to me, when it comes to student journalists, him and Sam Newman covering Temple at the same time, it was like, yeah, those 2 guys are really freaking good at this and really good at the whole reporting thing. I'm going to stick to the microphone over here. Like, that's what it takes to be really good. I think I've got a good thing going with the radio and with the broadcasting thing.
Well, since you mentioned sports talk radio, that's a great segue, and I think probably the point at which you and I started to kind of orbit the same type of path was as you're getting close to graduation. Generally speaking, for folks that don't know this world, you kind of have a couple of set paths as you're coming out of school and you want to get into the sports broadcasting world. You're going to go into minor league baseball. You're going to go into local news. Or into sports talk radio. And there's kind of a fourth sort of carve out path, which is, college broadcasting in a way. And obviously we end up there in a sense, but that's basically, and all these things that you've described, these students that you went to school with are kind of sorting into these different camps. And again, I got really lucky in my idiosyncratic way that I never did a day of honest journalism in my life. And, I ended up walking kind of right into a job with Georgia. So my school became my employer very quickly, and I never had to grapple with these things. But you did. So, tell me about kind of what that process was like. And obviously you've had a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, but just kind of, the path coming out of Temple into the quote, real world, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in Philadelphia if it's not for you. Like, I think we could start there. The conversation we had.
This was not a setup for you to give me a bunch of credit, by the way. I just want to be clear. This wasn't me. This wasn't me looking for a compliment, but.
No, but I mean, I think it's the truth. In full transparency to everyone listening, like we had a conversation my senior semester, and I was grappling with what everyone grapples with. Am I moving to Billings, Montana?
Yep.
Am I moving to, am I going to go after this minor league gig? And there was a couple of factors that led to that conversation. I think I had realized I'd taken Mark Zumoff's class. I'd called games for a while. I've been calling games for, going back to high school. And I was like, this is something I really want to do. But I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I went to you and you had told me that I think there's a world for you where you could freelance in this area. And that was assuring to me where, all right, that would help out. I've been talking with, a couple of Andrew Saltunas being one of them, local producers here in radio that were like, I think you could make a good part-time producer. So I was starting to try and see if I could cobble together work to stay. And there was a couple of factors. I had interviewed for one of the local station elsewhere where I don't know if he was a program director, station manager, whatever his title was, but basically told me he saw me as an off the air type, which crushed me. I was like, all right, I went and started like doing like the big sales calls. Cause if I'm going to make money, I'm going to have to go into sales. I'm going to have to go do something. I was like, I'm going to have to get out of this. I spent 4 years of degree. I'm an off the air type. Like, that's not what I'm here for. So that crushed me. We had our conversation that reassured me. And at the time I was in a relationship, wanted to stay local to the area. And I was like, all right, like you said, I could freelance through it. Let me see if I can hook on part-time, do radio things. I was like, I'll add door dashing. I'll add whatever it is to make ends meet. And I'm going to stay. And, I had Sam Cohn and Zach DeBuse, who were graduating from Temple, that both wanted to stay in the city, both want to work in the city. So we're like, all right, we're getting an apartment together, locked into the city. I'm going to go forward with this. So you help keep me in the city. And then Andrew Salchunas helped get me in at 97.5 and then start doing part-time work with them. And just the path I've been on the last 3+ years of the Fanatic's been absurd. I couldn't have ever imagined it. It's incredible. And now I get to, live out multiple dreams all at once.
Oh, I get the endless delight out of just, being in some, cheesesteak restaurant or pizza shop and seeing, the 97.5 simulcast on NBC Sports Philly and, seeing you in the corner there is always a delight. So tell me about the role with 97.5. And again, I'm so interested in the parts of broadcasting that there's just things that I have never done and could never do. I think of myself as pretty versatile, but sports talk was just never in the cards for me. It scares the hell out of me. I don't think I could do it for a day. I grew up driving in my dad's car and nothing but WFAN was on my entire childhood. So we always had WFAN on. Occasionally he'd flip over to WIP, but he's a New Yorker at heart. So I've heard a lot of sports talk. And New York and Philly, probably the best two markets in the country for it, but it's just never something that resonated with me in any way as something to say like, oh, I think I could do that. I know I couldn't. So how are you making that work? Because it just seems like so much that you have to take in and be able to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot, in today's day with the attention spans, you're really trying to grab, it's not just about, hey, what's going to run for 4 hours. It's what's going to be repurposed for digital. What's going to work here. And a lot of it. And for me, it's been a tremendous learning process because I've worked with now a number of really talented people who have all had different backgrounds. Andrew Salchunas being the first host that I produced on a daily basis was the best thing in the world because he was basically producing the show. And so he's telling me that, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. And this is all while he's getting his big shot to host. So it was amazing what he did to foster that environment for me. And then I worked with Bob Cooney, worked with Mike Missinelli, and now working with John Marks. You pick a little bit from everyone. And it's about hitting what's important. And in this town, nothing beats the Eagles. It's what's happening. If I could ban the 2 words of Kevin Patullo for a week, I would, but we're talking about the offense. So all right, the offense is the talking point, but all right, what can you take off of to move this conversation forward? People are upset. Why are they upset? What about their being upset is right? What about them being upset is wrong? What context can you bring to it? So it's all about trying to build branches off of the main piece of conversation. If I go on there and say the Eagles offense stinks, well, that's cool. Like, man, I watched the game Friday too. Like, what more can you bring me? And part of that's matching audio from ESPN, matching audio from insiders, and just trying to build something where the conversation's continuing and becomes dynamic. And it's honestly helped me in the play-by-play world because, all right, what context can I add to the situation happening out there on the floor? Or, hey, this game's a 20-point difference. How do you make it engaging when maybe the conversation isn't exactly about the game? Plus the slice of life stuff is always fun. Like that's the part of radio. I enjoy talking about the teams I care about, but I enjoy so much more the fact that we get to like breathe with our conversations and kind of interact with people in like what fandom's about and what, daily life is about. Everyone today, everyone after the Bahamas trip is all like wants to hear when I get back on the air, like how the Bahamas trip was. It's like, nobody should care about my life that much. Like my parents probably, yeah, they're interested, but they probably got less about the trip than the audience did talking about it. So, that's kind of it's so unique, and you're so lucky to be able to talk about the teams you care about with people who care about it just as much as you do.
Oh, I think there is an aspect to it. The best people, you become a fixture in these people's lives, right? It's in the way of a podcast or something like that. You become kind of a parasocial relationship, I guess is the term now for it, that you are feeling like, even though I've never called into a radio show, like, hey, I know, I feel like I know Glenn Mack now. There is an aspect to that of it that's really interesting, that you're a participant in this kind of ongoing conversation.
And it's insane just like to think about being out, and like I'll be out with friends, someone will come up and like, hey, and jumps into something that we were talking about during the week, and I forgot about it because as soon as the show ends,
you've talked about 40 hours worth of things that week.
Right, I'm on to the next show, and it is almost never the take you had. It's always the offbeat, stupid thing you said, or like right now our listeners are doing a lot of AI images of me that they're putting out there, and I'm like, and everyone wants to talk to me about that right now, and it's so fun, and it's so great to like just see the impact that the forum has on people's lives, because it's just so different. So it's been really cool, and worked with John Marks. It's awesome given how many years I listened to John Marks.
Well, while you're in the process of doing all that, obviously the door opens for you here at Temple to come back. And I guess it started out by doing some things with us on ESPN Plus. It started maybe with some men's and women's soccer games on ESPN Plus. And then this is now year four? Year four of doing women's basketball on the radio. So I think, again, I'm just using my own experience and projecting it onto you, which is all I've been doing probably for the last couple of years. But I think, having the chance to – those two things are more different than they may appear to the casual listener. The idea of doing a game, even though it's a Temple game, and you do Temple men's basketball now on ESPN Plus, which is probably the biggest thing, in terms of visibility and viewership that folks that are listening may know you from. So you're doing our men's games on television for ESPN Plus. You're doing the women's games on the radio. And I think probably those each have some pros and some cons and some things that make them unique and interesting. I am an old soul. I'm a radio guy at heart. I like being a team broadcaster. I think it has some, again, unique advantages. Even though folks want us to be totally partisan, when we're on ESPN, it's just a different set of muscles. You're down the middle. You're calling the game with a little bit more even-handedness. Even though you're going to be excited for Temple, you have to be, by nature, if the other team hits a buzzer beater, you've got to sell that just as well, because you're not, Ray Dunne Temple grad. You're Ray Dunne, ESPN. So, how have the two disciplines, I think having a foot on either side has made me a little bit better at doing both, but how have you kind of reconciled those two sides of the play-by-play coin? Because even within that discipline, there are some sub-disciplines.
Yeah. It's interesting, because I do think, I go back and listen to some of the TV calls. I'm like, all right, radio guys, slow down. Like, they could see what's going on.
That's the other thing. Yeah, to say nothing of the fact that it's two totally different. You get the most obvious point, which is they're two totally different media as well.
Right. Yeah. No. Sometimes I'm overcalling it, and there's absolutely times where I'm like, all right, you really punched that moment for Temple. Maybe that moment for fill in the blank team. Otherwise, like, you have to punch that one a little more. It's a natural thing. I've been around Temple now 8 years going.
Sure.
So it happens. And it is very different. It's different with the radio, because you live the program when you're doing the radio voice of it. Like, it's not just that I'm sitting down for a production call with Diane Richardson. No, we're on the road. I'm seeing Coach Rich at breakfast. I'm talking to Coach Rich's husband at breakfast. I'm talking to the staff consistently throughout the day. And you're just living so much more of the personalities, and you are more able to relay the message of the program doing the radio broadcast, whereas the ESPN is more the message of the actual game that's happening in front of you, and kind of what's providing context to what you're watching. Radio, you are the trusted voice of what's going on there. You're giving the play-by-play of it. You're giving exactly what's happening. You're the eyes, ears, and everything. TV, it's more like, all right, this is what you're seeing. You're seeing this because, or, this is important because, or this thing you don't know about is interesting as it relates to these two programs. I like the one thing I've loved so much about doing ESPN Plus is the storytelling aspect of it. I just love being able to let the game breathe and say, well, yeah, we were talking to, or I love surprising Mark Jackson with a fact about his career from, or Jason Ivey surprising him with a fact from when he played of like, and our production crew will tell you this. Nobody loves the series history more than I do. When we go back to, this series dates back to 1920, whatever, I'll find that first game, try and get a date to it and tell you what was happening in the world that day. Just because I like the ability to breathe there more. So ESPN Plus taking the space and like using it to color kind of outside the lines a little bit, I love. And then, like you said, there's nothing like being the voice of a program. So radio, and I have the old soul being a radio guy too, where just describing the action and going crazy for the program is always going to appeal to me.
Yeah, for me, it's going to sound wrong, but I like radio lets me kind of just shut my brain off. You don't really, there's not time to think about anything other than what's happening. I could just kind of click into a zone for a few hours, especially, and, you have the added responsibility of working solo when you're doing these women's basketball games. And so it is just you for, upwards of 3 hours. And I do think there is just a zone that you kind of click into. You're in this kind of weird conversation with yourself. There is obviously a listener that's out there that, you're talking to but is not able to interact back. And there's so many things going on in TV.
Yeah, and to that point about radio and marrying the radio work I've done with the play-by-play work, one of my first responsibilities at the Fanatic was Sixers highlights. So Tom McGinnis does it alone, and you're listening to the tone, the pacing, the energy, so much of that is just when I'm listening to myself, I'm like, all right, make sure that you're not talking to yourself, but while you're talking to yourself, kind of facilitate a conversation with yourself. It sounds weird, but it's kind of the way I get through it, because I'm not looking at an engineer or producer or anyone for hey, what's happening, or I'm not so Mark, explain that one to me, or what are they doing there? It's just all right, you got to explain that one to yourself. You gotta, react as if you would react with a group of people, but just in that moment alone. So yeah, to your point, it is an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I think it's good to do both. I like, that we have the ability to kind of toggle back and forth, but sometimes, and there's so many moving parts in television. You have a producer, you have a graphics producer, you have all these people, and like you said, the storytelling aspect of it is great. At its worst, it can be a runaway train, and you're telling you. I sometimes feel like, wait, I got done 2 hours, and I don't even really remember what happened in the game because we were hitting, this, that, and the other. So they both come with their pros and cons, and so I think like anything else, the ability to be a Swiss Army knife and get to do a little bit of everything makes it fun. But I do want to come back to the relationship side of the radio thing, because I think that really is, to kind of get to the core of what makes this special, and for you to be doing it for your alma mater as well, I think carries that extra weight with it. And you've been through some great moments in these last 4 years with Diane Richardson coming into this program. You've gotten to call an American Conference championship, which I'm extremely jealous of. I hope to join you in conference titles at some point. But, you have had these ability to have these great moments. But I think what's really cool is, and I always tell her this, the fact that they have kept the core of their staff together, and she really has preached a family atmosphere in that program. And I imagine for you, sometimes it's an arm's length relationship, even though you're part of the team, you're not part of the team, you're kind of in this nebulous space when you're the broadcaster. But I really feel like it sounds like, from everything I understand, they've done a great job of kind of bringing you into that space, and really you're getting to celebrate the joys of that program along with the players and the coaches.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing. And I've told Coach Rich this a few times. I went to Temple and got a degree for 4 years in media studies and production. Since I graduated Temple, I've been getting a degree in life, just getting to know her and getting to understand the way she views everything and just how incredible a human being that she is. And what she's given me in terms of just the positive outlook on life, and just, I write down some things or I shoot around when she's preaching a message to a team, like that type of stuff is great. And she does welcome me into that orbit. I mean, it's amazing, that group, and it's amazing what that staff, the lengths they'll go to for her, and the relationships they've had with her that date back for so long. And I really feel like I have been welcomed into that family. I wasn't there with them at Towson, but I know when a story's about to break out from Towson, I've got a pretty good idea, oh yeah, that was when Miles was a scout team player, when Aaron was a scout team player, or, they're telling a story about when he was in high school playing for Coach Rich. And you just get to start to feel like you are just a part of the family. When we get together, it's not like, oh, we're just strictly business talk about basketball. You kick around, you talk about what's going on and what's happening. Like, I ate Thanksgiving dinner with Jonquel Jones. Like, what? Like, there's like, it's insane. And like, just who she is, I think is emblematic of the success that she's had. She's just someone that proves that good things happen to good people. And yeah, they've done an amazing job of making me a part of that family. And it's a year-round thing. I'm talking to these people. It's not just, hey, November, we're back. It's, is there a chance I could see Tim Tebow while I'm down the shore this summer? Is there a chance that, Coach Rich, you're going to be here? Oh, I'm going to stop by, or I'm going to pop by and see, Aaron, Miles, Shanita. Like, everyone's just so wonderful. And I'm just so lucky to be a small part of the big machine that they've put together here. And they have produced some really, really incredible moments, and I'm looking forward to a lot more.
Well, you may have just answered my last question by talking about Thanksgiving dinner with Jonquel Jones, but I was going to ask, is there just a moment, and the one that comes to mind, I think anyone that's listening to this conversation, if you've made it this far, you should definitely check out the awful announcing article about Ray calling the 2000th win in the history of Temple men's basketball. It's a great write-up. Sam Newman for Awful Announcing, which is a great website blog covering sports broadcasting, but a really, really nice write-up of your journey, and kind of thinking about that as a type of full circle moment where, wow, this is the kid that, was at Springford thinking about, hey, maybe I'll, come to the city and spend a couple years here. Have there been, is there a moment that stands out to you as, if you can say, to your 13-year-old self, as it were, just looking back, like, hey, this is pretty remarkable that this journey landed me here. Is there one or two that really jump out at you there?
Yeah, especially, last year with the ESPN Plus broadcast with the men's, the 2000th win, that amazing story that Sam wrote that was just tremendous and so kind in so many different ways to me. That was definitely a moment for me. There was the buzzer beater last year against South Florida where, you hear just a little bit of your voice underneath an ESPN, SportsCenter top 10 highlight. It's like, I used to memorize these top 10s when I was younger, and now here's my voice. You can just faintly, kind of hear it there in the background. And on the women's side, and the Big Five championship, beating Villanova at Villanova was amazing. Especially, I went around to everyone in the facility that day. I was like, listen, as a Temple grad, you got to understand what this means to me. Like, I know you guys get it, but like what this would do for me, it's huge. And then there's a cut of that night that we win the American regular season championship on our home floor. I guess ESPN Plus is about to end the broadcast because I got the clip sent to me by, I think, friends, family that were watching. They're about to send it to the rollout end of the program. And you see Diane Richardson walking off the court with the basketball, excited. And she's reaching out her hand because she's coming out to give me a big hug while I'm standing there. And calling the action, calling as they celebrate and all these things. And I think if you go back to the radio broadcast, there's probably like a break where like you probably hear the mic like, hey, Coach Rich, we hug. Yeah. We hug on the air. And I just think back to like that first meeting I had with her where, she was like, if we win, you get a ring. Like, you're part of this family. You like, I intend on building this thing, and I intend on doing special things, and I want you to be a part of it. And that moment, it kind of encapsulates what that women's program's done for me, but kind of what this university's done for me. I've been fortunate to do so many different great moments. I feel like university just give me a big hug, and like, I might not beat the industry plant allegations here with the way the university's propped me up and helped me out so much over the last 4 years post grad.
Well, no, that's awesome. And listen, my claim to fame, my two truths and a lie icebreaker, go-to story is that Maria Taylor and I used to do Georgia Sports Daily together. We used to host a web show on GeorgiaDogs.com, and now she's doing the Olympics, and I'm still doing sports on the internet. But someday I'm going to say, hey, Ray Dunne said on the Alpod, I'm the reason that he made it to Temple, and I know you're doing big things in this industry, and I appreciate everything you've done for Temple. It's an awesome Temple-made story, and we look forward to hearing many, many more Temple moments in your voice to come.
I appreciate that. And thank you all that you've done for me, because I do feel like I'm going to have that moment where I'm like, Kevin Kopp's kind of my mentor. That guy right there, he's kind of the reason
one of us will end up riding the other's coattails, whichever way it works out. It's a package deal.
Sign me up for that.
There you go. All right, everyone, that's this week's episode of The Alpod. I want to thank my guest, Ray Dunne. A reminder, David Litvin and Amelia Wright are back on the Tuesday edition of The Alpod with an all-new episode. We've got a few more weeks left before our holiday break, so make sure to check us out Tuesdays, Fridays. Subscribe, leave a rating. Please tell your friends. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram at The Al Podcast. Special thanks to our Alpod team, Christy Bannon, Justin Miller, Prince Moody, and our executive producer, Dan Lobaz. I'm Kevin Kopp. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and go Owls.